Now I'm going to show you some best of cabins. These are Steiner cabins, and we put these on tour once a year, second Saturday in August every year, and people just love them. And in fact, Nordic Center here is going to have a tour. They're going to join us on the August tour and have their own bus from here come up, and we tour 5, 6, 8, 10 of these cabins, including the Steiner Church this year. And these are some of the cabins that we put on that tour. This is the one that started this whole thing with inventorying Steiner cabins. Nancy Dougherty came to us. She owned it and said, "You got to inventory them." Turns out we got a leg up on doing the inventory. Henry's granddaughter, John's niece, was also interested. So she would come once in a while, pick up John, and John had a phenomenal memory. He could remember where they built these cabins, and he could find them in the woods. So she'd come pick him up, say, "Let's go find a cabin." He said, "Oh, let's go up over here, And he would identify him. So when he had his birthday party, invited Steiner owners and friends to come, she had 25 cabins already documented. So we took that and then built it, and now we're up to 100. But this is one of the first cabins. This is Nancy Dougherty's that started it all. Very good shape. She's restored it over the years. I like this cabin on the right. That's varnish on there, not paint. Most of the cabins by now, Henry didn't do anything. That's varnish on there, and they keep it up. They're very unusual. This is the best of. This is a summer home. There's about 6 or 8 cabins on Forest Service land that are called summer homes. And most of them are pretty well maintained, because if you don't maintain a summer home, you get a nice note from the forest ranger saying, "Your home's looking a little shabby." This one on the right just sold for $575,000. Yes, it's on Barlow Trail Road. It's a beautiful little cabin. Sits on Hackett Creek. They got a little bridge goes across the creek. It's got a Steiner garage out here by the corner. It's a beautiful little cabin. It has been not a bed and breakfast, but overnight rental. Now it's going to be a permanent home. This one here is called the cedar. There's big cedar trees and rhododendron. There are all kinds of styles. See, here's one's been painted gray. This one over here is interesting. One in Brightwood. Family lived there now. Their name is Dial. And people bought it when they were young and raised a family there. One day they had a family gathering there, and Grandpa was there. He's looking around and he said, "Yeah, I wired this thing in 1940. So, this is a big home in Sandy. He built, most of these cabins are from government camp to, say, Brightwood, but there's other outliers like Fogelbo here and Garden Home. This gray one here is in Sandy. It was built for the Sandy Mayor at the time. The big house has a sitting room. You go upstairs, there's a sitting room before you go to the bedrooms. It's very unusual. I haven't found any Steiners that are the same size, same design. Everyone's different in little ways. And it's interesting how Henry designed these homes. It's typical. We probably figured out, first of all, he wasn't going blind. You know how in the early days they used to have a home design, little drawing of a plan for a home in a Sunday paper? He cut those out. He had about 300 of those all in a stack with a rubber band around them. So he kept up with home design. But he'd get to, you want Henry to build a home for you? He'll sit down with you and take a piece of butcher paper and start drawing. Okay, how many bedrooms do you want? You want a fireplace, yes or no? And he wouldn't say, "Where do you want the fireplace?" You want a fireplace, yes or no? He'll put it where he wants. And he'd start drawing windows and stuff. And then one of the big questions he asked me was, shower or not? Showers cost a lot more than not. And then he'd get done, he'd write The one we have that's in best shape, $600. Henry signed his name on it. That was the contract, that was the plans, that was it. And there's quite a story about his last building he built by himself was a Creo shop in Brightwood. And the lady that wanted it was a German. And of course, Henry was German. So you can imagine, Henry had his ideas, she had her ideas. And it was a royal battle, I guess. And that building is the weirdest building of all the Steiners you've seen. It's just chopped up, different things, weird, but it's definitely a Henry Steiner. I build all sizes too. Here's Fogelbo. That's a pretty big one. And there's a early one in Government Camp. We built a resort in Government Camp. 1937, they were building timberline. A lot of things were booming in Government Camp because they knew Government Camp was going to be the drop-off point for the timberline was going to draw a lot of people. So this Moki, remember Moki's picked him up, the family of Steiners in Oregon City? Moki's giving up the money and built a resort in Government Camp consisting of 5 cabins, their own water system, their own electric system, horse stable, all that stuff. Didn't last long. The cabins got sold off one by one, and it didn't turn into a full-blown resort. But those cabins are all still there. The one on your right is the only bed and breakfast that is a Steiner. It's in Alder Creek, and Hidden Woods is the name of it. And that's an interesting place. There were 3 Steiners on this piece of property, and 2 of them burned down. And this is a little one that they use now for the bed, part of the bed and breakfast. And they tried to rebuild one of the other ones, and they got one, it was an interior wall, built it into a new log cabin there. Every once in a while, Fred and Henry and John would get mad at the old man and take off. At one point, John quit, went to Longview, got a job in the mill down there, and hooked up with a guy that wanted a cabin in Rockaway Beach. So there's a Steiner log cabin in Rockaway Beach. So I think by this time, John is dead, and I find out there's a Steiner in Rockaway Beach. I said, I know Rockaway. Can't be that big a deal. I'll go just go down there and find it. So you drive every street in Rockaway, and there's no log cabin. So I stopped at the Chamber of Commerce office. I said, I'm looking for a log cabin in Rockaway. There's no log cabins in Rockaway. Come on, there's got to be. So I found out it's supposedly owned by the Oregon Writers Colony. That's a little co-op of writers. The writers go here to retreat and write their book. And it turns out this thing sets on the foredune. You know, there's the actual dunes coming off the beach, and then Rockaway, there's the next second dune, foredune. This sits on top of that. Well, because this is a log cabin, it got battered on all sides with storms. So what does the Oregon Writers Colony do? They cover it with vinyl. Not only did they cover the logs with vinyl siding, they had aluminum molding made and covered the windows and the door frames. And if you walk up to it, the basement door and the upper door are Steiner doors, and everything else is covered. Inside, it's a beautiful Steiner cabin. John built this using his dad's design while he was mad at his dad and wasn't working on the mountain. But it's a Steiner, you know, and he did a lot of masonry work. It's got a full rock foundation, and there's a full rock wall around the whole lot there. And it's a beautiful place. Looks over top of those houses that are right on the ocean, looks right over top of those, looks down on the Highway 101. Beautiful, but it's not a log cabin on the outside. It's all covered with vinyl. Couple more. They're all sizes. He built everything from, some of these little ones are worker cabins for a sawmill that was at Wildwood. Sandy Lumber Company had a mill there, and they'd have some place for the mill workers to live. So he built 600 square foot little cabins. And then the biggest one, probably, Fogelbo is pretty big. There's a bigger one at Troutdale, right on the Sandy River. It probably has to be over 3,000 square feet. Has a basement in it. Garage originally was in the basement. 2 stories, bridge, all the bells and whistles on that one. Then there's ones at risk. I got the word that there was a Steiner cabin for sale in rhododendron. Gave the lot number and everything. I went looking for it. I looked at here Henry faced it. There's an open meadow, swampy there. So he had it facing that, not facing the street. So you walk up in the back, it doesn't look like a Steiner. It's this prefab log thing. In the 60s, they called them Fogelbo logs. They run lumber through a mill and cut 2 tongue and grooves on it, stack them up. That's what turns out this log cabin is covered on the outside with these Fogelbo logs. The only thing they saved was a tip-off. See those curved pieces of wood on the porch there? That's a Henry porch. Other than that, from the outside, you can't see any semblance of a log cabin. I think those things could be peeled off and you could save log cabin underneath there. This gray-red one is an interesting story. It's part of the Snowline Motel. Originally, it was, I think, 5 Steiner cabins worked as a motel. The office was 1 cabin, and there were other ones. A couple of them got washed away in the '66 flood. But she didn't want, the lady who was having them built, she didn't want Henry's sunburst or wagon wheels in the gable ends, so he's got these other uncharacteristic pieces of wood in there. There's just a lot of little things changed. Other than that, the Steiner cabins. Interesting deal going on with these cabins. Right now, when you drive up the highway into rhododendron, you don't see these, but there's a Snowline Motel there that's a 2-story cement block building. That's the motel. These cabins are behind there. They were part of the original motel. That property is up for redevelopment, and we're working with the owners and everything, trying to get a deal. We will salvage these cabins. They'll have to apply for a permit to tear them down. And if I wanted to be bad about it, I could say, no, they're historic, we better save them. And there'd be a hell of a fight with the county. But in return for saying, okay, I don't care if you tear them down, we'll get the rights to salvage all these cabins, save the logs, save the good pieces, rebuild, reconstruct a Steiner cabin on the museum property in Government Camp. Then we can have a living exhibit of Steiners. Right now, all the Steiner cabins are private property, so people in the middle of the week want to see a Steiner, and they can't do it because they're all private homes. We'll have a Steiner on site that has all the original Steiner peeled logs and do his favorite architectural features and have an on-site museum. There's a museum, I got the idea from a museum in Alaska, Homer, Alaska. They have a settler's cabin right outside this big museum. And people love the settler's cabin, heck with the museum. This is the office for the Snowline Motel. It's in terrible shape. This one is an interesting one on the right. This is Mark Fritz here in the front corner. Mark's a log builder from way back. For years, he tried to buy this cabin or get a hold of the lady that owned it, fix it. She's in California. Oh, no, I'm not going to sell it. I'm going to come up there and live in it when I retire. Well, it never happened. Finally, the county, it was busted into. People squatted there and had a fire. Inside is all black, burned, rotting, vertical logs rotting off. And they finally sold it for back taxes. And the guy tore it down and built a cabin out of containers there. Okay, so let's talk about where these cabins are. By the numbers. My numbers jumped up to 100 now, documented. 2 churches, 1 National Register being Fogelbo, 3 county landmarks, 8 summer homes, 3 are highly modified, 2 are gone but documented. 2 were moved with fireplaces intact. Now that's quite a feat to do that. 4 overnight rentals. Now we have 3 because one person just bought that one. 1 bed and breakfast and 1 motel. Where are they at? There's 6 in Government Camp, 79 in Rhododendron, 1 in Cherryville, 3 in Sandy, 3 in Toutdale, one in Garden Home, Rockaway Beach, one by John Steiner, 3 in Molalla. The ones in Molalla were built as a logging camp. And then later, when they got the land all logged up, they sold them up as private. So somebody took the bunkhouse and changed it into a house. Somebody took the office, turned it into a house. So there's 3 Steiner-built log homes there, and one in Roseburg. One in Roseburg was originally built as a hunting lodge for a logging company, way out in the sticks between Roseburg and Crater Lake. I sent Nancy, this lady that started this whole thing, down there to get it. She couldn't find it. Mo and I went down there. We got within a mile of it, and there's a locked gate there. It was owned by Hoyt Axton. Hoyt Axton was a country singer, movie star. His wife now has it. I ended up talking to her. It's back there. It's unique. And I want to know how much they paid Henry to go down there, because Henry didn't like to leave the mountain. But if you cajoled him enough, and obviously he did, went to Roseburg and built a cabin down there. So someday, I think Mark even went and looked for that once and didn't make it. It's way back in the hills behind lock gates. So here's Fogelbo. It's got some features that Steiner's have and doesn't have them. So I just put this together to add a little extra for this talk. The setting, it probably, when it was built, it probably should have been out by the street closer. I think it's pretty rare that they build a house back in as far as Fogelbo is and have that kind of circular driveway there. But I'm sure Henry and the owners agreed upon the siting. It's a beautiful setting. It looks down on this place. The vestibule, there's only 2 Steiners I know of that have this rock vestibule. And those were a John thing. He liked to work with rock. So this one and the one in Troutdale has this rock vestibule. Basement. This has a basement in it. In this case, they had the furnace down there, a big year's supply of sawdust to fire the furnace. So the one in Troutdale, it was a garage. They've since take the garage out of there. The balcony, pretty typical. The shutters are not Steiner. The doodads, whatever you call those things on the end of the logs, not Steiners. Those were added later, I think probably by Ross's family. And the deck. I'm not sure the deck was something that Henry would have built, at least not that big as it is now. There's one other story I'd like to see. That the deck, not typical Steiner. Okay. There's one last story I'd like to leave you with. It's telling a story about Henry. When we had John's 91st birthday, they were asking him questions about building Steiners and all this stuff. And his sister stood up. She's would have been about 8 when they were doing all this. She's probably 80 or something now. And she said, "Don't believe everything John tells you." She said, "As girls and young kids, we never played. We couldn't play games like our best because there was always logs in the yard to be peeled." And he did. He had 8-year-old girls peeling logs with a draw knife. And she said, one time, Dad had a bunch of logs there, and he's really behind work, so he hired a couple of guys to peel logs. They figured out that if you took a spade, these logs were cut when they were green, they could just peel that bark off just like you peel a banana. And they got a whole bunch of logs done, and everybody was happy until Henry come home and fired them because they didn't use a draw knife, so they didn't have any marks on them that showed they were hand peeled. So that's the kind of guy that Henry was. So that's pretty much my story. We'd be happy to answer questions. If I can't answer them, I got Mark Fritsch here. He's a log builder, Sweden log builder.
Great.
Knows all about that. Restored a lot of Steiners.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
You're
That
welcome.
was an incredible lecture and story, and we all appreciate it. And we now have time for a few questions. So if you have a question, just raise your hand and we'll come around with a microphone. There's one way in the back. Get a lot of exercise today with so many people here.
Okay, thank you so much. I wonder if you have exhausted the inventory, or do you think there are more cabins to be discovered?
Are there more cabins to be discovered?
Oh, yeah, I have a short list that I got to go look at sometime, probably 10 cabins on there. And you never know, Henry never kept a list. In all his stuff, we actually found his briefcase in his sister's basement when she died. That was 50, 60 years after he had it. It had those house plans in it that I talked about. It had the plans for this one cabin that was $600, but no list. He never kept a list. So the only way we've ever got to 100 is by first his granddaughter driving John around, and then Nancy pounding the bushes, and then we did a grant, and then the lady went to the county, went through the county records, looked at every log cabin that shows, if your house was a log cabin, it shows in the county records as a log cabin type of construction. So she got all those from that part of the county, went and looked, and then the grant ran out. And then I get a lot of calls, so I found a lot of them just that way. And you just drive around up there, you find one. And there's a couple that, most of them are summer homes, so you can't just go knock on the door and talk to them. Leave them a note, they don't answer or something. But yeah, they're out there. And there's some that are, I'm sure, obscured and changed that are out there that you don't know until you go dig into them like that one I was talking about. So.
Okay, there's another question.
Once you've documented a log cabin to be a Steiner, do you put a blazon or any kind of marking on it so if someone were to be walking around or whatever, they would realize it's been officially documented?
No, they don't. There's a lot of people think that the museum ought to be more proactive and put these on the National Register. Well, they're all private, so we can't just go out and put a home on a National Register. It doesn't work that way. You got to have the landowner's permission and help, like we did here with Fogelbo. But in the county, every county in Oregon is different about how they treat historic buildings. Clackamas County's got some ordinances and rules, but they don't follow them. They're not interested. It's not on their priority list. For a while, they had a program where they actually had it, if you document it, they give you a plaque, make it a county landmark. They quit doing that. A couple of these, that one that sold for $500,000 is a county landmark. Now that helps if it's a county landmark. Supposedly, if you follow the rules, you can't tear it down, or you have to go through a lot of hearings before you just tear it down or modify it. But I'm not sure that's being followed. We talked about. I would tell the owner, I've done enough of them now, I feel confident saying this is a Steiner, or no, it isn't, or I don't know. But that doesn't count for much. And so what we've done recently, and you see it here tonight, there's tremendous interest in Steiner cabins. And we've been doing those tours now for 15 years, and we sell out every time. And, you can't really, they're all private homes, you can't do it 2 days. You don't want to run too many people through somebody's home. So we limit about 300 people 1 day a year. That's not very many. So we started something called the Steiner Society. So the Steiner Society has a couple of goals. One is anybody can join. A lot of the cabin owners have joined. A lot of the Steiner family, which Steiner family is big. A lot of Steiner family have joined. And the goals of the Steiner Society is, one, to raise money to move those motel units to the museum property. The two, to continue the work of documenting and educating people about Steiners. And so out of that, we come up with the idea that we'll have a committee made up of Steiner Society members that will verify, kind of like authenticating artwork, they have a little committee and they learn about the artist and looking at the signatures, whatever, they verify it. We will verify a cabin, and we'll have a brass plaque made and give it to them and put it on the cabin. So, and, I think that'll go a long way to doing what our goal is, starting was to preserve the Steiners. And yeah, that's what we got planned.
So we have one more question.
Yeah, I'm curious about the kind of wood he used. Were the outside logs mostly alder? And then inside for the railings, did he have a preference for, you said one was manzanita, but I'm curious about what woods he used for his characteristics.
No, almost all the wood used in the cabin, big logs, little logs, everything dug fir. Yeah.
Well, before we close tonight, Ross, would you come up? Because Ross, of course, is the owner of Fogelbo, or transferred it to Nordic Northwest, and lives there in a gorgeous Steiner cabin. And we want to thank him and thank you for this evening.
Oh, you're welcome.
So special.
I have to demask here. I've lived in a wonderful Steiner house for 70 years, and it's been a very wonderful experience. And I've shared it with thousands of people that have come to Fogelbo and enjoyed the grounds and the house. And it's been a life passion with me. And I thank you very much for coming. I learned a lot of new things tonight. Really wonderful. Thank you.